Emma Heming Willis, who is the author of The Unexpected Journey and a staunch advocate for FTD research and awareness. Come on up.
Hey, thank you. I've known you for a very long time.
A very long time.
Anne sold me one of my first apartment, second apartment.
When you were going off to marry someone else.
Oh.
She was leaving New York.
Okay.
She was leaving New York, and you were moving to LA.
Oh yeah. Okay.
And I helped you sell your apartment.
That's a different story.
Yeah, well, yes, but anyway,
Let's
but
stay
then
on task.
Exactly. But that's how long we've known
Yes,
each other.
a long time.
So anyway.
Anyway, this is just fun to see you like this.
Exactly.
I didn't know this.
Exactly. Well, I mean, so many of us are going through parts of this caregiving journey, not even necessarily with FTD, but especially, not only our spouses, but our parents. And so it's such an important topic. You are just innately shy, and this is so not your comfort zone, which is all the more reason why I am in awe of what you're doing, because you not only you don't have to be doing this, but you're doing it in such a beautiful way. The funny thing is, I ran into a friend of mine. I was walking into the office today, and I said, "Oh, I'm just running out, and I've got Emma coming, and she's going to be speaking." And she said, "I saw her speak last night at the Museum of Natural History, and she did such an incredible and beautiful job. She was so eloquent." And I know that you are riddled with anxiety,
I am.
but you would never know it. So I just think that that's even more admirable.
Well, you know why you don't know it? Because I took a beta blocker about 15 minutes ago.
So you're totally calm.
Yeah.
It's all good.
It's a miracle drug. I will tell you that it really just takes all the sweat and the thoughts out of your mind, so you can just kind of lock in on what it is that you're trying to do.
So what is it that you're trying to do in writing this book? Because it really opened you up to, crazy criticism, first of all, which I couldn't even believe that anybody would in any way judge what you were saying in terms of your journey. But, what kind of inspired you to write the book?
So when my husband Bruce was diagnosed with frontal temporal dementia, we walked out of that appointment with no hope, no direction, no roadmap, just to check back in a couple of months. And I realized how quickly people living with this disease and caregivers are so unsupported. I had to then go, search the World Wide Web to figure out, well, what is FTD? What is frontotemporal dementia? What will this look like for my husband? What will this look like for our two young children who were 8 and 10 at the time?
Well, the thing that's so crazy is that anyone looking at you would say, you, of course, you have connections, you've got the resources, that you, if anybody, could get the answers to this, which is insane to me. Were you first given wrong information? Was it like, he's got something going on, but it wasn't FTD, or it was like nothing's wrong, or you're going, you even thought like, I'm going through a rough patch in my marriage, like, because the personality changes.
Yeah.
That's the tough thing I think about FTD, would you say, in terms of like, when somebody's like having, like memory loss, right? Mm-hmm. And that seems to be a little bit more specific. You're like there, but this, you were seeing personality changes, right?
And something happening with my husband's speech. So when he was younger, he had a severe stutter and sort of, overcame it in essence over time. And then I started seeing that come back, and just his language, there was just things off, and there was just things off, and no one was flagging it. He wasn't flagging it. A doctor definitely wasn't coming to me and flagging it. Because no one is I wasn't thinking about a young onset dementia.
And how old was he around the time?
Oh, it's so hard to know, like when my husband, when he started to end and when this disease started to come into play. So, I'm not thinking that this is a young onset dementia. His doctor obviously isn't either. And there just came a point where I just knew, like, this is not my husband. Something is not right, and I need to go figure this out. And that's what I did. So the first diagnosis they came to was aphasia. And what I didn't realize is that,
what would be the difference? Tell me, just very simply.
Losing language. You're having a difficult time conversing, reading. That was what that diagnosis was. It wasn't until a year later that was basically a symptom of the disease, primary progressive aphasia, which is a variant of frontotemporal dementia. So FTD is the most common form of dementia for people under the age of 60. It affects the frontal lobe and the temporal, where this is executive function all here, and your language is in your temporal lobes, and it's different to Alzheimer's, right? Alzheimer's affects the hippocampus. That's very clear, right?
Right, exactly.
When you start seeing someone
you're repeating
who
yourself,
has
or
a memory lapse. So
Right.
This is not FTD, and I think that is a common misconception.
Right.
He was diagnosed with this thing, and I had to go figure it out, and I did. I found the specialists, and I found the dementia care specialists, and I found the right person to help our children and help me find the language to be able to talk to them about it. And why was I able to do that? Because I have resources, I have access, and
But Emma, there's a lot of people that have those things, and they didn't do what you did.
Listen, I wanted to make the best that I could, the best life that I could for my husband. I wanted to know how to support him better. I wanted to know how to support our children, and that's what I was able to do. So with this book, what is in there is all the 25 experts and specialists that I was able to surround our family with. I put all of their insight into that book so that I could share it with the next caregiver who does not have the time, who might not have the resources, and definitely doesn't have the access like I did.
Right.
So where that book shares parts of my story, like the real gems in there are the experts and the specialists.
Right. Well, also your Instagram page. Because you were always sharing different experts and talking about. There was something that is it snow?
Tipa snow.
Right.
Yeah.
And my mom had dementia, different, but but there was something about black colors. Was it right? So it was like a simple thing. So could you just share that tiny little thing? But it's so important to share community.
Yeah.
Because that's one of the things that. Even with the bios, and I will tell you that if anybody is going through a medical issue, looking for a job, whatever it is, call me, because I want you to be able to look at the bios. You can go back through and say, who went through this also? But those pearls of wisdom and insight. So tell us about just the tiny little bit, but black.
Yeah, so I knew that there was an expert for everything out there in the world, and I felt like I wanted to find a dementia care specialist. I didn't know if that was a thing, but
You were going to find it.
I was going to find it because I just needed help. I just needed to figure out how to navigate my husband who had a young onset dementia. And the doctors weren't giving me any information or any help. So I typed it in, and sure enough, the first person that appeared was Tipa Snow. Does anyone know who Tipa Snow is? Oh, okay.
Right, exactly. Okay. Yeah, I didn't know who she was either.
Yeah, the hope is that you will never need to know about Tipa Snow. But I, looked at her website, I looked at what she does, and she, not only educates people about dementia, but she knows about all different types of dementia. What I learned through Tipa is that there are 120 different types of dementia, and that when you know what that diagnosis is, you can then learn how to support your person better. So by her knowing about FTD, which was just such like a godsend, because I just felt like no one understood what I was going through and dealing with, and she was just such an incredible person to be able to talk to. And she taught me these things that, don't wear black when you are with someone that has dementia, because people with dementia can't see black. So like if someone was looking at you, all they would see is a floating head. So I was like,
and unnerves them, right?
So I knew, okay, well, that's a good tip. I'm not going to wear black. When you are speaking to someone with dementia, instead of speaking to them front on, you would turn yourself and speak to them with your shoulder towards them, because this looks less confrontational than this. Remove the black mats from the door because it looks like a black hole.
Right.
There were just all these things that I did not know, and no one was telling me except for Teepa. So she was just brilliant, and she really understood FTD, and she was really able to help guide me with these pearls of wisdom. So, she's, if anyone needs her, I hope you never need her, but she's fantastic.
Right, but those are the things that you're constantly, I don't know whether you know the reach that you have. I mean, you've got millions of followers on Instagram, but every single day you're sharing those things, and they're tentacles, and it's like the gift that keeps on giving. I will tell you that everybody that will walk out of this room will then be telling so many more people, and it's such important work. One of the really, the guidelines, not guidelines, you give tools to help the people in your life that are going through this unexpected journey. And it's not, and this is like with people that are going through grief. Let me know if there's anything I can do for you, right? And then you're like, now the weight is on me that I have to come up with something for you to do.
Sure.
So can you just share a few of those? Because that part of the book I thought was so helpful, because I think so many of us are like, what do I do? I mean, and they don't know.
No, they don't know. And that's okay that they don't know. But it is such a common thing that, not just with dementia, but if someone has cancer, if someone, if there's something going on in another family's life, and you will reach out to someone and say, just, if there's anything I can do, please let me know. When it comes to that, what I say to caregivers is that you have to do a little work and think about all the things that you do in a day, in a week, in a month, that you could actually delegate and give to someone. So when they say that, you are ready and armed, because sometimes it might be just they're just saying it to make themselves feel better and they're really not going to actually show up. Give them something. You have to give them something, because caregivers are taking care of so much all the time, and it's really hard to want to delegate. I know for myself, I was like, no one else can do this like I can. Right. I don't want to hand this over to anyone. But it's so important to be able to ask for help, because we're doing this all on our own. And the reason why that's important, because one of Bruce's neurologist said to me, you need to know that caregivers can die before their loved ones. That 30% of caregivers are dying before the person that they're caring for. And I didn't know that caregiving could be so bad for your health. And that doctor really woke me up, where, she saw that I was burning the candle at both ends. I'm trying to do the thing over here for my husband while keeping it really quiet, while taking care of our, 8 and 10-year-old, and trying to, do all the things. And she's like, you have to start asking for help. You are lucky, you have resources that others might. You need to think about getting a professional caregiver in here. And she was like, Emma, this is a progressive disease. You think you can handle this today, but I'm going to tell you, it's not going to get better, because there are no treatments and there are no cures for this disease. And, it was basically the wake-up call that I needed. And I talk about it in the book, because I think it's so important for caregivers to know that, this is not a solo mission. We should not be doing this on our own. And that is why we do need to bring family, friends, community into this. Doing it on our own is not sustainable. And that is what this book is. This book is giving people permission to ask for help and to know that it's okay to ask for help. I really needed someone to tell me, to give me the permission that you need help and it's okay. You know, I subscribe to this narrative that like as a woman, I need to be of service to
everyone.
Everyone.
Myself, right? But you don't like the word self-care.
I hate the word self-care.
Okay. And why do you hate the word self-care? And what word would you use in terms of making your health a priority? Right?
So, you know, when people think, I'd always hear, what are you doing for your self-care? Like,
oh, a mani-pedi.
I'm not doing anything, you know, I'm really not. And I just think the word and that term is just so overused, and we are thinking of manis and pedis, and we're thinking of massages, and I just think it's been taken over by the beauty industry. What I started really thinking about was like, what do I want to make time for? For me, that felt a little bit more actionable. And it was about what were the things that would feed my soul. And for me, it was like really simple things. It was like just getting out for a walk. It was getting into my garden, you know, like weeding, planting, killing the plant, replanting. You know, but that was like
cursing at the plant.
But that felt almost very much in my control, because everything else has been so out of my control. So being able to make time was just a different way for me to reframe this whole thing of self-care. Reading a book, calling a friend, you know, it's really just simple stuff, but when you are caregiving, you are not thinking about those things, but it is really important to bring those elements back into your life. And I know that my husband would want that for me. He would want me to live a life that is full and happy and not clouded by his disease, especially for our 2 young children. So I really needed to wake up. I needed someone to kind of like shake me out of this, you know, this robot body I was in, and really start learning how to make time for myself, how to care for myself, to make sure that I was, you know, I'm making his appointment, I'm making the kids' appointment for their doctors, and I'm forgetting my mammogram, I'm forgetting my dentist appointment, my yearly checkup. You just put yourself on the back burner.
Well, even just as a mother of 2 young children, a single mother at this point, right? That's exhausting. But then you also have Bruce's care and managing that,
and an aging mother.
Right.
You know, and Bruce's mother is alive and kicking, and she's going to outlive us all. She's incredible. So you know, there is a lot. There is a lot happening, as in for all of us.
We were at the FTD. Was it a gala? Was it where was that? Like
their annual
fundraiser.
Event, their fundraiser.
Your daughters were there, and they were just awesome. I can see how proud they are of you, as they should be. And you were talking about, you know, kind of modeling showing up. So you're not only showing up for this community, right, and you're advocating tirelessly, because just in the last 2 days, tell me a little bit about being in the Senate. I don't know what was happening there, but I saw on Instagram that you were like, dream come true, and you were walking onto the Senate floor. What were you doing? You were at the White House.
We were in, not the White House, but we went to
Thank
Washington.
God. You were in the ballroom. You were there.
We went to DC. So I was able to join the AFTD, which is the Association for Frontal Temporal Degeneration, and be able to, you know, go to DC and really educate Congress people there about FTD. It was like FTD 101. It was a congressional briefing. We, you know, met senators, Republican, Democrat, anyone that would listen, because, you know, FTD is so unrecognized. The systems that are in place don't support FTD families. So, you know, we're really just trying to bolt on to what Alzheimer's is doing. And, you know, just being like, hi, we're over here. So that was like a dream. You know, the advocacy part has been very grassroots. We've been going kind of like state to state. I mean, we're just trying to like fight for like FTD Awareness Week. Like that's what we're trying to get.
And so how does it help? Because there was did you get it into New York State? Where
a registry.
Okay,
Yeah.
So is it a registry so that you can help with research, right? Or because if there's documented cases, then you can get more money for funding. That's the
We don't really know how many people are actually being diagnosed with FTD. They're saying like 60,000, but this disease is so misunderstood,
There's no way.
Undiagnosed, misdiagnosed. And what we have now in New York, it's the first of its kind, New York State Registry, where when someone is diagnosed with FTD, it gets counted so that we can now actually collect data on this. So the thing that is so disturbing to me is that when my husband was diagnosed in California, he gets diagnosed and nothing. His diagnosis goes into the world of nothing. And I hate that. So we've done this in New York. Me plus other advocates are doing this in California. And that's cute and all, but like we need national visibility. So going there, one of the senators was like, well, we should have this as a national thing. I was like,
You're like, no shit.
Yeah, we should.
Really?
So yeah.
Well, that's why we're here, actually.
That's why we're here. It's to have those conversations, they seemed very interested, but you know how these politicians are, but they seemed very engaged, and it was very exciting. It was probably the most fun that I had in a long time. I didn't know that like you could be thinking about FTD, advocating for it, and like having a really good time all at the same time. I can't believe I've actually got here. But it was fantastic. I had dreamt of this day of being able to bring the advocacy to Washington, D.C.
I just Really.
We have a long way to go, but it's just like step by step, brick by brick. I got the energy for it, and there's a lot of advocates out there that are joining in and just want to be seen. They just want to be seen.
Right. Well, there's no way there's 60,000 because, I've got 3 friends that, there's just no way. There's no way. But I think what you were talking about in terms of the change of, it doesn't have the face that so much of the research and the talk about dementia, and it's something that's separate, but it's just not, it's not seen, but it's absolutely important because you won't get any money towards research, which brings me to the foundation.
Okay.
So you were obviously putting a ton of money and resources into getting the resources, into kind of FTD or the AFTD, right? But then you decided to join start your own foundation. So tell me what's different about that and what are your hopes with that?
I live and breathe FTD 24/7, for better or for worse. And I felt like I am in it. I am meeting the people. I am going to all the things. I am meeting, scientists and researchers and advocates, and I'm in these rooms. I'm like, I might as well just go all in and start this family fund. A family fund is great, but it's never going to do what federal investment can. But it will complement it. So, my hope is that, the mission is to be able to fund research and for caregivers to have the support they need to thrive. So
is that with money towards caregivers, or is it for information for caregivers? Like, how do you envision it?
So our first grant went to the AFTD, and I specifically had it go to their respite program. I know for myself, when I started to bring in the help and the support, that really helped me to sort of somewhat balance myself. And I just felt like respite for caregivers is really important. And, however they do it, a couple of hours here, there.
In terms of they would pay for it, so people put in for.
That's right.
Exactly.
Yeah. So the hope is that we will continue to raise. I am learning how to do these fundraisers and then be able to put it into research, into caregiver support. So it's exciting. I'm really excited. I feel very hopeful
Good.
about it.
Talking about your girls, tell me, because each of them, obviously at a different age, I mean, birth order is a huge thing, right? And so you always have birth order just ingrown that kids will be different. But also Bruce's, kind of illness progressed and the kids were at different ages. What's it been like with you navigating their journey and helping them navigate? I mean,
they've grown up seeing their father decline. And I hate to say this, but sometimes I think maybe it's better that they have been so young through this. I think what's really hard is for his older girls, who have all the memories. And, the kids are young girls. I've always been very open and very honest with them. What I have learned from one of the specialists I bring into the book, Megan Graham, she says that, when a child asks you, when they ask you these really raw questions, you need to be able to tell them the truth, but in an age-appropriate way. So she really taught me how to do that, how to speak with them. The day that we had got the diagnosis, the girls knew that we were going that day to get this diagnosis. It was kind of an exciting day because we are like, what is going on? Like, we need to know what is happening. So when I got back home, I said, your dad has this disease that hurts his brain called frontal temporal dementia, but we can refer to it as FTD. And they were like, FDT, so they made an acronym for it, Fantastic Turtles Dancing.
I know.
So that they could, remember the order of the.
Right.
So, we sat there and we kind of laughed because we were thinking about these fantastic turtles dancing in their dad's head. But, what people have always told me is that children are so resilient. And that used to kind of piss me off because I'm like, we don't even know what we're dealing with, what they're seeing, how they are growing up. But I have to say, they are so resilient. They were right. Well, they were right. But I also do believe that resilience is taught. And I think that has been really important, that I try and model my best self. I mean, not that I'm like, Miss Strong person. They've seen me at my worst. They see when I'm grieving. They see when I'm upset. They've seen the whole gamut. And I think that's important for them to see that. So all in all, these girls are doing really well in a really difficult situation.
Right.
But that has a lot to do with what I've learned,
Right.
And
but it also has to do with how you model it, and you are being totally honest. And also because this was when you were talking about at the gala, the fundraiser, and you just talked about showing up. And that's what you model for them. You model it every day in terms of, fighting to take care of him, protect him, being very, very present for them. You are a wonderful mother. You really, really are. And you're a wonderful daughter. And, and going from a marriage that you described as he was your caretaker, he was your protector, he was the fixer, and you just didn't have to worry about it.
Yeah.
And you've now turned on not a dime, but you are that, kind of knight in shining armor, but in a very beautiful way, Emma, really, because you show up and you've done so much for our community, but also just in terms of keeping his story and his dignity. And what broke me, and I probably won't have brought tissues just in case, I always have tears at the end of Hamilton when she's talking about, who lives and dies, who tells our story. And you write at the end of the book about sitting with Mabel and just sobbing at the end of that, like, who will tell our story? But you've done this incredible job of trying to get help in every way. It's not going to help him, but that is the most incredible gift that you can give to your children. It's resilience, but it's also showing up. I mean, you show up in so many ways, and that to me is an incredible gift. And he showed up. There are so many people that through the years, when I would help you buy or sell an apartment, there'd be an article and somebody would say, oh, Bruce Willis, and they would always, someone is telling me a story about him coming back to where he used to work on the Upper West Side, or a bar that but it was just like, he was the person that was a good guy that would never forget kind of where he came from, would take care of people, and would show up for other people. So you've taken that on in a different way.
He's very beloved, and I know that. And you can, I saw that yesterday in Washington, D.C. Why am I able to go into the senator's office? Because of my husband. And you know what? I'm going to go right through the door. That is the goodwill that he has. And I don't want to say that I'm like taking advantage of it, but I know that this will help. I know it will help someone else. Yes, Bruce was my protector. He figured it all out, and that role reversal has happened. But I grew up with a single mom, so I kind of know how to do this. My mom divorced my dad when we were 7. We went from this middle-class family to her, having to take on 3 jobs, and nothing was below her. She was handing out samples at a grocery store. She was cleaning someone else's house. She was doing whatever she could to make ends meet. So that's been my role model, is that you figure it out. And what a blessing to be able to have that example. So, for some, it is very hard to change that role, but for me, thank goodness I had that model of my mom, so I'm able just to kind of show up. And, Bruce is doing really well with a really unkind disease, but he is surrounded by love and care. And that is what our kids are seeing.
Right.
I always say that, this actually could be so much worse, but that's what they're seeing. We are showing up for him in such a way, and that's what they're going to remember. Of course, they're not going to have the memories that I want them to have, that Bruce would want them to have, but what they're seeing is really love in action.
Yeah, absolutely. We have time for questions.
Oh, okay.
Do you want to choose, or do you?
No, just you choose.
No.
I'm a Gemini. It's hard for me to choose. Alzheimer's is the most common form of dementia. 2/3 of women patients, in the U.S. are Alzheimer's. We are at a higher risk. And how was he diagnosed? Through a scan. Yeah, PET. I get back into my original role now of being Bruce's wife, where I get to sit with him, I get to hold his hand, I get to really be with him, because as a caregiver, I was all over the place. I was angry, I was resentful, I was tired, and that is just not how I want to spend this chapter of my husband's life. There's no one else that can listen to our wedding song, that can look through albums. I get to be in that, and that is what a gift. That's such a beautiful gift.
Yep.
Yeah, I've heard about things that are happening in AI, really, overall with medical things. I think that
Scanning,
I think there's a big something good, I think, actually will come. And the thing about, these clinical trials, that is just so hard it's a hard pill to swallow, because by the time someone with FTD is diagnosed, it's too late to get into those clinical trials. It takes a long time to get to that diagnosis. So there are trials, but we just don't have the people to get in them. So that's why I'm out here banging the drum, bringing awareness to it, so that, if you see something different in your partner at a young age and they're acting different, that is a change in the brain and that needs to be addressed. So that's a part of the awareness. And what I'm hearing from these clinicians, it's not, and I'm here talking about FTD, but if we crack the code on Alzheimer's, it's going to help all of these different neurodegenerative diseases. So, Parkinson's, ALS, if one drug doesn't work for ALS, it could work for FTD. There's a lot of crossover there. So there's a lot of promising things happening. There's a lot of research and there's science is moving forward. I mean, my hope is that in my lifetime, we will see a cure for one of these diseases. And in our kids' lifetime, that's the hope, that when they leave that doctor's appointment, that they're going to be leaving, not how I left, with nothing.
Piece of paper.
They're going to be saying that we have treatments that can help. And for this caregiver, we have the support that you need. We have a roadmap for you, as opposed to the trauma of that diagnosis appointment. This is insane. So there's a lot of promise. There's a lot of things that are moving. So I am so hopeful, which is why I started the fund, because I know it's going to help.
You also have a company that has the, for brain health,
Yeah.
which we should all focus on. So just tell me a little bit about that, because I also want the women to be able to.
So I founded a company a couple years ago called Make Time Wellness. And I was having my own brain fog and getting gaslit by my doctor saying like, oh, you're stressed, you've got mommy brain, it's fine. And what I had learned through different neurologists is that there are actually things that we can be doing for our brain today to support a healthy brain. I learned about the pillars of great brain health. I started implementing that into my life and I really started to see a difference.
Which are?
Sleep, nutrition, supplementation, connection is a really big one, learning something new. I started implementing all of that and really started to feel like the fog was lifting. The issue with the supplements was like they were handfuls of vitamins multiple times a day. And I said to my friend Helen, who is now my co-founder, and I said, there needs to be something that's easier, that's sustainable. And I said, I wish I could take all of these vitamins and like put it into a drink or put it in a gummy. And she's like, oh, that's in my wheelhouse. We can absolutely do that. So as we started, really learning more about brain health, we learned that 1 in 5 women will get Alzheimer's. But I'm not here to scare people. I'm just letting people know that there are things, there's studies and research that there are things that we can do today to help our brains, but no one is talking about it.
Right. We're talking about it here. Trust me, every month.
Yeah.
Every single month. I want to thank you. I want to thank you for being here and for
warm,
all
lovely
that you
room.
do. And I know how grateful everybody in this room is. So thank you for being here.
Yeah, thank you.